There, I just let myself off the hook. I don't have anything clever to say to them. So I don't know what I'm going to say. I've always fancied myself as having said, of being able to say clever things, even if it's not true. Nobody ever says they're not clever. So I'm going to continue to think they're clever until somebody says otherwise. Usually it's a month later and they say, why did you say that? I remember saying it. What?
I'm just whispering, please, guys. So it's not fresh now.
Okay, we're in Genesis, at the end of Genesis 25. We're making a major turning point in the narrative right now. We are arriving. Remember this vertigo-inducing thing here? We have finally arrived at Jacob, the heart and center of the book of Genesis, as the nation of Israel, in a sense, comes into being. Well, there's not a nation, but there's a family group that's going to now develop. It's going to be the biggest mess in the Bible, or one of them. So I was thinking about, where we're at in terms of the people of God. There's been a people of God since Jacob. To Abraham and Isaac, there was the promise of a people of God. But then you can begin to see that promise come to fruition in Jacob. Excuse me. One. Where's number 2 and 3? They're come. 2. We'll see. Number 3 is hanging around out there somewhere, or in there. But anyway, so Jacob is really the beginnings of an identifiable people of God, and that story will reach its fulfillment really with the conquest, when the covenant promise in chapter 15 is finally realized. But on the left there, you see the people of God, physical Israel, with a covenant made to Abraham, and then the choice of Jacob, which we will get to front and center here in just a minute, the choice of Jacob. There's no way around that language. And then the gatekeeper, the great gatekeeper of the people of God, and that is Moses, through the law and the Levitical code, and then ultimately, by the time of Jesus, and supremely circumcision. Moses, by the time of Jesus, circumcision will be the great, I guess, boundary marker. Moses, if you ask what marks off the people of God, the answer is first Abraham and then Moses. Moses acts as a boundary marker and a door of exclusion, an exclusionary boundary marker for the people of God, marking them off from the rest of the nations. And he will continue as the gatekeeper for the people of God until there will be a new gatekeeper, who is the prophet like Moses, Jesus. And he will then replace, in a sense, Moses. I'm making this up as I go along. And instead of circumcision, entrance will be granted through faith. So no more proselytes into the people of God, Gentiles becoming Jews through circumcision. You will become a member of the new people of God directly through faith in the King, who is a descendant of David. So this is a very, very simple, overly simple probably, encapsulation of the creation of a new people of God, but we haven't even hardly got to the first people of God. And that's what we're going to talk about for the rest of the book. And then how this nation, the beginnings of the people of God are going to end up in Egypt. It's a humble beginning. Who would have thought that God would make a promise and begin to shape a people for his own name, and do so by driving them into slavery in a foreign land where they would become pagan idolaters for hundreds of years. Such is the divine plan. It's unbelievable. And there's reasons for that, and we'll talk about that as we go along. Or there's not reasons. As you look back on it, there were results from that. There were benefits that accrued from him doing things that way, which we'll talk about as we move along. Anyway, let's look at genealogy. We are talking about a genealogical people of God here. And so we start with Terah, who was Abraham's father. That's the end of Genesis chapter 11, right after Babel, the story of Babel, with three sons, the choice being Abraham, Haran. Wait a minute, did I get that backwards? Who died?
Where, Aaron died, but Aaron
Aaron
died first.
Okay, there we go.
And
I didn't-
so when, I think Aaron died back in the land of
Yeah.
Ur.
Yeah, I
And
didn't,
then,
okay.
It was then Terah and company left.
And Aaron.
And-
Okay.
Sons of Lot.
So I got that right. Right?
And Aaron's
Did I get that right?
Yeah.
That's the- okay.
You've got Lot on there, Aaron's son of Lot.
Yeah, I forgot about Lot. He should be on there just because he was another threat to the covenant. Anyway, this is kind of how the genealogy is going to work up to this point, at least as far as the way that I want to think of it. In terms of the blessing on Abraham and his descendants, and so you can begin to see it move. We haven't even put on the 12 tribes between Jacob and Israel. There will be 12 tribes. But we're arriving down there with Jacob and Esau, the story of Jacob and Esau. But that's a very simple genealogical approach to the establishment, the creation of the first people of God, physical Israel. Does anybody want to disagree with that or say anything? Okay. Then, and of course, we're going to talk about Romans 9, because here we are. At any rate, we left off with Esau, with the birth of Esau and Jacob, Esau being the elder son. But you have this remarkable statement, a prophecy of two peoples, because that's what these two sons represent. Two nations are in your womb. God says to Rebekah, two peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. Normally that would be the elder. But he immediately reverses that. The older will serve the younger. And there you have a principle, what will become a long-standing principle in biblical revelation of the preference for the younger. And we talked about some examples of that last week. Prime among them, David, the youngest son of Jesse, from whom came the Christ.
You can also see Joseph, he was the 11th son.
Mhm.
Um,
And Benjamin.
and his sons, Manasseh and
Yeah.
Ephraim, I don't remember which one's the youngest, but I know.
Ephraim.
Ephraim.
Yeah, we hit that. Okay, I got that right. We talked about that last week.
I think so.
Were you here last week?
Yeah, here, listen.
Okay.
Another thing that's, you get two nations, talks about two nations there. Edom continued to be a thorn in the flesh to Israel too. Just like the relationship that Jacob and Esau had was very valuable relationship, and it continued with the nation of Edom too.
Well, Edom went and harassed the Israelites when they were trying to escape from Babylon. If you want to read about it, read Psalm 137. Towards the end of it, the psalmist says, "Blessed is he," referring to the nation of Israel, "who takes your infants and dashes them against the rock." Because that's exactly what they did to the people of Israel who were trying to flee from Babylon.
Yeah, so that's where we are. It's Esau versus Jacob, and this competition will now come front and center. And out of that competition, a son will be chosen who was already chosen in the womb, right? That's the point here. We'll go to Romans 9 in a minute when it's relevant, or after, to sort of summarize the situation. But you can already see it with these two, with the twins, when the boys grew up. So we'll continue in verse 27. When the boys grew up, so we're going to skip their probably competitive spirits as they were growing up. I don't suppose that this competition came out of nowhere, this rivalry. I don't get the sense that these are two close brothers at this point. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field. while Jacob was a quiet man dwelling in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So we have a mama's boy and a papa's boy. So that's going to dictate a good part of the story coming up as well. And now birthright. Once when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field and he was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of that red stew, for I am exhausted." Famished? I don't know. Therefore, his name was called Edom, which must be red or something like that. So Jacob said, "Sell me your birthright now." And without any thought or value to it whatsoever, Esau said, "I am about to die." Sure you are. Skillful hunter. The skillful hunter is about to die of starvation, says the skillful hunter. Of what use is a birthright to me? So let's keep on. Jacob said, "Swear to me now." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Now, I'm not sure that this would stand up in a court of law or what Jacob did with this agreement. I don't know how it's not like he went to Isaac and said, "Hey, my older brother sold me his birthright, so that means that any privilege that he was going to be granted now transfers to me." That's obviously not the case, given what's going to happen in the future, not very far from now. So I'm not sure what this means on the ground. What Jacob thought he was gaining by doing this. What was the material gain in the real world? I don't know. And Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew. Well, at least he gave him bread too. And he ate and drank and rose and went up on his way. Thus, and here's the important statement from the vantage point of the divine narrative that works its way through the human narrative. Esau despised his birthright. Now you can talk about other problems here, for example, Jacob's deception and so forth. But with eyes wide open, well aware of what he was doing, Esau did exactly what the narrator, when he finishes telling the story, the narrator now characterizes the important point in case anyone missed it. Esau despised his birthright.
Well, another thing too is the fact that it's only between the two brothers.
Exactly.
Nobody else knew anything about it other than God. So,
What was the material benefit to Jacob?
yeah,
What was the material loss to Esau? So Esau says, "All right."
because basically when Isaac said, go fix me something, I'm gonna bless you as the firstborn. Nobody else knew that this actually happened.
Right.
This actually happened.
One person did.
Okay, yeah.
God knew. Yeah. So you're seeing this right here. You have it's prophetic enactment, right? You have enacted parables like Jesus going in and overturning the tables of the money changers in the temple. That's an enacted parable and a prophecy of the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem that was within a generation. Jeremiah did this, laying on one side for some amount of time, laying on another, building the little model of Jerusalem. These are enacted prophetic decrees, if you will, real practical representations of what God is going to do. And so we see two here. One is this one. Jacob came out holding his brother's heel. Why? Well, it's prophetic of what's going to happen. Then here, Jacob gets Esau to voluntarily, you can say he tricked him, but he didn't trick him. He said, I'll give you a bowl of stew for your birthright. Take it or leave it. And Esau immediately says, "Oh, I'll take it." So you could say it's deception, which is exactly what Esau is going to imply later on. He stole my birthright from me. No, he didn't steal anything. You made a deal, and he lived up to his end of the bargain. He gave you a bowl of stew and a piece of bread in addition. You didn't even ask for the bread. He just threw that in as, an extra. So, just in case, Anybody wondered the point, the author spells it out, Esau despised his birthright, and that is prophetic as well. What do I got to say about this? I'm looking at my notes this time.
The value in it.
Yeah. As the writer to Hebrews, we'll go back and revisit this later. It's more relevant after the curse on Esau. Let's see here. Where's isn't Esau in this chapter?
Esau's in 13.
Which one is it?
Are you thinking about the Hall of Faith chapter?
No. No.
I honestly don't remember if Esau in Hebrew, but that doesn't mean it's not there.
12:16. We'll go back and talk about this one later. Let's see, to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and by it many become defiled, and no one is sexually immoral, unholy like Esau, who sold his birthright for a single meal. That's an apt characterization of the story. For you know that afterward, that's coming. When he desired to inherit the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no chance to repent, though he sought it with tears, and we can talk about what he means by that. What that means, who is the he? Who is not repenting here?
Esau's not repentant.
Oh, Esau was desperate. Father, please change your mind. Please bless me. Isaac said, no. So it's hard to tell, but that's the way the story is going to play out. Anyway, we'll go back and talk about that later. But that's an apt characterization right there. So Esau acts in accordance with God's divine plan without even knowing it. All players in the divine narrative act according to God's plan, or consistent with it, or however you want to think of it. Everything unfolds according to the divine plan. That's why he wins. At every moment along the timeline, he wins. It can look like he's losing, but God wins, both now and then on the great day. That's it. And he's winning right here because he's made a decree. The elder will serve the younger. And now the elder is acting the part, is acting to make the situation unfold according to the plan. So is the younger without any virtue at all. It's not like Jacob knows. So he's saying, you know, God is going to give me the blessing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to help it along by tricking, so to speak, Esau into selling his birthright. You know, he's just Jacob.
I think it's not the first time that Jacob did this and kind of deceitfully get in his way. Because he did the same thing with Leah's and Rachel's father, Laban, yeah. And the fact that he just let me divide all the bad
Yeah.
sheep and all those stuff, and they put stuff in it to make sure they all become bad. So he has next thing you know, he has a big a lot of animals, and he heads back toward
I will argue though that one was from God, because
They all are.
David was the thief there.
yeah.
And just because somebody puts a stick in the well doesn't mean that the cattle
Yeah.
or whatever is gonna come out strike.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he did it both purposely to deceive.
He knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah.
He knew what was going to be the outcome of this. Oh yeah. But he paid dearly for his life choices, because he's going to cost him 20 years of his life. And what does he say when he gets down to Egypt, does he say to the Pharaoh, after the Pharaoh says, how old are you or whatever? He says, oh, it's been a blessed
130 years of that.
It's been a blessed 130 years. Is that what he says? No, short and cursed, or short and
Short and difficult.
just, yeah, that's right.
I don't know the exact wording. Few
Few
and hard, maybe.
Few and hard, yeah. Let's see. the point of the birthright, of course, is who's gonna inherit. And that's everything. From whose line will the people of God extend? And it was decreed in the womb that it would be Jacob. And so now the events have to unfold in that direction. This is the third instance of sibling rivalry in Genesis. Now I have to remember who these were. You had Cain and Abel, Ishmael and Isaac. Yeah, and now Jacob and Esau.
You and evil.
And in all three cases, it was the younger who was favored. In all three of those cases, Cain and Abel, Ishmael and Esau and Isaac, and Esau and Jacob. Isaac, he was the younger. He inherits the blessing of the covenant, and he's going to want the older. He's going to want Esau, and he's going to be tricked, in a sense, by both Jacob. I mean, you could say it this way: he's going to be tricked. He's going to be tricked by God through Jacob, however you want to think of that. But it was not a lucky accident on God's part. It's not like he breathed a sigh of relief. Oh boy, I wanted Jacob, but Jacob's going to be the younger. So how are we going to fix this? There's no plan B here. This is how it unfolded. And this was the divine plan. We talked about the irony of the starving hunter begging for food from the mama's boy. Awesome. What does Jacob know about the divine plan? And when does he know it? It's very hard to tell with him. It's not going to be until he's on his way out of Canaan that you get the sense that he's had any real psychological commitment to this God, Yahweh, over and above any other gods. And it will not be until about chapter 35 when he has to tell his 12 sons, okay, we're going to be worshipers of Yahweh. We're going to be the Yahweh clan. So put away all those idols now. He's going to have to do that. That's when they're going to be a clan under the God of Abraham, or at least declared so.
As far as that divine plan goes, so God communicated it to Rebecca. I don't know that she ever communicated it to anybody. I mean, the scripture's silent on that, and you get the impression of surprise from Isaac. So I don't think he ever knew it, and I don't know. I mean, it's possible that she cultivated it in Jacob, but I get the idea that it was just something she kept treasured in her own heart.
Why would you? I mean, what's the point in saying it? He's not gonna change his mind. He's the patriarch. It's going to be the elder. If God wants to tell him that, then he can, but he doesn't do that. He just tells Rebecca.
Yeah.
So I can totally, yes.
So
I can totally see where she would say, I'm just going to keep this one to myself. And then, the maneuvering was in the genes, right? From Rebecca to Jacob. It's going to be Rebecca's idea to steal the blessing from Isaac. That's not going to be Jacob.
Well, it's the same, it's kind of the same when Joseph blessed Ephraim
Yep.
and Manasseh. He put his hands, yeah, to the good, and Joseph, no, this is the oldest. No, he said, no, this is the way God
Exactly.
wants it.
Yep. From beginning to end, from Cain and Abel, all the way to Manasseh and Ephraim. It's the younger. When will you people learn?
well, even in Moses, he was the youngest child.
He was?
Yeah, Aaron and
Oh, yeah.
his sister were older. What was her name? Miriam.
All right. Well,
You were asking about what was he said about his lifespan. Pharaoh was few and evil. Have been my days on the earth.
yeah, but Jacob, you were often the author of the evil. So yeah, Jacob, where do you think those sons learned it?
Yeah.
You're like father, like son, man. It was just it's all intrigue.
And then, I mean, we will see, we're not getting there, I'm looking way ahead of the narrative, but you'll see that Jacob's older sons were very evil. they were disqualified from receiving the blessing or inheritance or whatever you want, and it got passed down to fourth son. Reuben slept with his stepmom.
Yeah,
Levi and Simeon killed innocent people.
innocent-ish.
Well, the guy who should have died, Shechem,
Yeah.
he should have died for what he did, but not all the men in the community.
Right. Judah's an interesting story because it was his idea to sell Joseph into slavery. And that didn't come out of nowhere. But these brothers, man, they were a piece of work. But when it came down to it, I forget how the story goes. You will see a redemptive mindset in Judah, in Egypt, with Joseph.
But
He's changed. He's different. Simeon's the same way.
I think one of the greatest passages in all of scripture is found in Genesis 50, where after the death of Jacob, the children in fear that what Joseph's going to do to them, get back at him. And he says, what you intended for evil, God
Yeah.
intended for good.
Exactly. That's one of the principles of the whole book. From the very beginning. You meant it for evil, but yep, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. Yeah.
I mean, that's Romans 8:28.
I mean, sometimes he does overrule evil. I firmly believe that, but most of the time he doesn't. He works through it. That's the genius. That's the majestic. That's the artistry of the master plan of redemption.
Nothing takes him by surprise.
Romans 9. Why not? Let's open that can of worms. This is, well, what do we make of Israel then? If God has turned to the Gentiles through faith and Israel is rejected, which is his explicit statement, at least temporarily, we find out later in this 3-chapter passage that he has another plan. He has more in store for Israel. But in the meantime, has God failed in his redemptive plan? Did he just make a mess with Israel and he's starting over and his plan failed? And the answer is no. It's not as though the word of God has failed, for not all who are descended from Israel belong to Israel. So how are we to understand Israel? That's why I kept saying right here, physical Israel. There's physical Israel that defined the people of God. And by the time of, post-exile, during the period of the exile and then following, you see it very clearly in the book of Acts, for example, where you have this concept of the proselyte. And the proselyte is a Gentile who submits to Moses by being circumcised and then is welcomed into the people of God. But even still, as a second-class citizen, he will never be a Jew. That dividing wall in the temple precincts, separating the inner sanctuary, the inner court, from the outer court of the Gentiles is absolute and sacred. Period. I don't know, maybe they allowed proselyte Gentiles in there, but I just have trouble imagining that there's this lineup of proselyte Gentiles standing there ready to drop their pants to get permission to walk into the inner court. I don't think they tolerated the presence of any Gentiles whatsoever. I might be wrong about that. So you got to make them Jews before you can make them Christians. That principle made its way into the church in Acts, and they had to fight that battle, which they did in Acts chapter 15, where the decision was, no, you don't have to make them Jews. That's the whole point. The whole point of Christ is you don't have to make them Jews. It's to not make them Jews in order to make them Christians. It's an unmediated people of God. There is nothing standing between the Gentiles and the Messiah. He is their Messiah directly, without regard to physical Israel, through faith. And so that's what he's talking about. He's talking about calling a people of God that belong to Israel, some kind of spiritual understanding of Israel, an Israel of promise, not an Israel of physical descent. Not all are children of Abraham because they are his offspring. It's not just physical, but through Isaac, through promise, shall your offspring be named. Now he is physical descendant, but what he represents is a people of God based on promise in this passage. This means that it is not the children of the flesh, physical, who are the children of God, but the children of the promise are counted as offspring. Now we come to Jacob and Esau. Who is the child of promise? For this is what the promise said. About this time next year, I will return and Sarah shall have a son. There's the promise. And not only so, but also when Rebekah had conceived children by one man, our forefather Isaac, though they were not yet born and had done nothing, either good or bad, and I'm not sure Jacob ever does anything good. I mean, of the two of them, the magnanimous one, the forgiving one, the exemplary one is going to be Esau when Esau has every reason to resent Jacob. And when Jacob returns from Paddan Aram, he will welcome him with open arms. All is forgotten. Esau does that. But at any rate, good or bad, in order that God's purpose of election might continue, not because of works, but because of him who calls, God himself. Rebekah was told, the older will serve the younger. As it is written, Jacob I loved, Esau I hated. Jacob I chose, Esau I did not, or something like that, however you want to think of it. He will bless Esau. Esau is going to tell Jacob, I'm doing fine. I don't need your, Jacob wants to give him half his stuff. Esau says, no, I'm fine. I'm glad you prospered. Welcome back. All is forgotten. All is forgiven. Let's just go on. So this is a passage about election based on a passage about election. He was chosen in the womb precisely so that the argument could not be made that God favored him based on some kind of merit that he had. That's the point. In fact, it makes sense from that perspective that he would choose someone who kind of had no virtues. If you ask, when are the virtues going to, well, eventually we're going to see virtuous Jacob. I don't remember, can't think of throughout the whole book when you say, finally, here's virtuous Jacob. I don't know that day ever comes. He's just there. And, oftentimes a victim of, now maybe a well-deserving victim of the intrigue between his wives. And then, between his sons, the Simeon and Levi put him in a horrible position with the Shechemites because he slaughters them. So, the surrounding peoples are going to hate him. That's what he says. He doesn't care about his daughter. They got his daughter. His daughter's kidnapped. But what he's worried about is, well, look what you've done to me, man. They're going to be mad. They're going to hate me. Simeon and Levi are going, what about the daughter? It's not an accident that they were the two brothers, because there were 4 mothers of that clan. And Simeon and Levi were brothers to Dinah. So they went and,
Leah's daughter.
is that the way that works out? Yeah, the oldest. Yeah. Okay, so that's the point here. Paul brings out the divine master plan. He is articulating the supernatural insight that is not even hardly between the lines, but between the lines of the narrative itself. The events play out this way. Paul, through supernatural revelation, explains it to us why this matters from the vantage point of the history of redemption and the new people of God. It says direct consequences, implications for a new people of God that God calls out from among the Gentiles through faith. That's all I got to say about Romans 9 at this point, unless somebody else wants to say something. We'll pick up Hebrews 12 later. Okay. Then 26. Back to weirdness. Well, it's all weird now, but repetitive weirdness. And we'll turn the page. Okay, this is going to sound familiar, and it's probably even more familiar than you might think. there was a famine in the land besides the former famine that was in the days of Abraham. So hint, hint, there may be some parallels here. We have a new famine. And the author is aware that there's a new famine, he's aware of the previous famine. And so you go, uh-oh, what happens when there's a famine? Well, we already saw what did Abraham do in the previous famine?
He said, sister, so they don't kill me.
Who?
Abraham did that to the Pharaoh in Egypt, and then he also did it to,
Abimelech.
Lola, okay?
So there's a famine in the land. And Abraham, even though he had just been told at the beginning of chapter 12, go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. That land is Canaan. And I will make of you a great nation, and so on and so forth. He gets to that land. And his first act when there's a famine is to flee Canaan and move to Egypt. And I'm firmly convinced never come back. And so Sarah ends up in Pharaoh's clan. I mean, he just makes a mess and a mockery immediately of the divine plan. That's how I read it. And so God acts to rectify the situation. No plan B. This was all known, and everybody's acting according to the divine plan, even if they don't know they are, including Pharaoh. And so the Pharaoh realizes from being cursed, right, by God, uh-oh, we have a problem here. They figure it out. Oh, you lied to me. I guess deception runs in the family, right? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So now Abraham then, Pharaoh says, why did you tell me she's your sister? We just found out she's your wife. Well, I was afraid you were going to kill me. Oh, okay. So in order to save yourself, you thought it'd be okay to offer your wife up to the Pharaoh to go into the harem. And it's not like she's ever going to return from that. It's not like they borrow somebody's relative for a few months and put her in the harem. That's it. So that's it. And remember, she's the mother of the promise. She's supposed to produce the heir. Well, how's she going to do that in Pharaoh's harem? It's an impossible situation. So God acts, and it foreshadowed the exodus from Egypt. They get expelled from Egypt. To make a long story short, Abraham and Sarah get expelled from Egypt and end up back in Canaan. That's what's going to happen. Fascinating. And in some number of hundreds of years, the nation of Israel will be expelled from Egypt and end up back in Canaan. Nice. So it's foreshadowing. Anyway, that's how it played out the first time with the Pharaoh. So what is Isaac going to do? It runs in the family, right? It's in the blood. And that's exactly, part of it will continue going, uh-oh, it's proceeding according to that plan. And Isaac went to Gerar, to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, and the Lord appeared to him and said, uh-oh, we're not going to do it that way. We're not going to do it that way this time. Do not go down to Egypt. Well, that implies he was going to go down to Egypt, and that God intervened and said, no, we're not going to do it that way this time. Dwell in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and will bless you. For to you and to your offspring, I will give all these lands, and I will establish the oath that I swore to Abraham, your father. So you see this repeat. Everything in chapter 12 is kind of being repeated here. You have the promise. You have this travel to the land. You have the promise. Egypt is involved. There's all these hints, parallels with chapter 12, but it's not going to turn out the same way because he's not going to leave the land. And then now you get the repetition of the promise. I will multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven, and will give to your offspring all these lands, and in your offspring all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. Only this time, it's because of Abraham. Because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. So Isaac settled in Gerar. So we have this sort of formal, almost sacred reaffirmation of both the promise and the covenant. The promise that God made to Abraham, then consummating in the covenant for land. It's all here present in this single statement. But it appears you can see the principle. The blessings of the covenant are directly tied to dwelling on the land. This is the land of blessing. Off the land, that's a different story. But on the land, that's where the blessings are accessible. You leave the land and the blessings are not accessible. And that will be a principle that will continue on throughout the Bible until the exile. When God will himself in 586 or 7 BC expel the remaining the southern kingdom of Judah from the land, and in consequence they will lose the blessings of the covenant and instead inherit the curses of the covenant. And there's this statement in where is it? Let's see how among nations. Yeah, this statement right here, one of the saddest statements in the entire Bible, is so perfectly encapsulates the loss. From the vantage point of the covenant promise, Judah has gone into exile because of affliction and hard servitude. She now dwells among the nations. Well, what does that represent? Curses of the covenant, not blessings of the covenant. That's why it matters. She finds no resting place. Her pursuers have all overtaken her in the midst of her distress. Right there. Lamentations chapter 1, verse 3. The author perfectly captures, from the vantage point of the history of redemption and the covenant promises God made to Abraham, the magnitude of the loss when the Israelites were expelled from Canaan. Okay. So let's see. He stays, but he's not given up on doing something like Abraham here. Do one more section. 11. When the men of the place would be down here, right here, this southwest area of Canaan. When the men of the place asked him about his wife, he said, "She is my sister." Uh-oh. He's trying to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. For he feared to say my wife, thinking lest the men of the place should kill me because of Rebekah, because she was attractive in appearance. When he had been there a long time, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out of a window and saw Isaac laughing with Rebekah, his wife. So Abimelech called Isaac and said, "Behold, she is your wife. How then could you say she is my sister?" And Isaac said to him, "Because I thought, lest I die because of her." And Abimelech said, "What is this you have done to us? One of the people might easily have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us." So Abimelech warned all the people, "Whoever touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death." So we have this protective shield put around the son of the promise by the Gentile. And you have, once again, like with Pharaoh and the first Abimelech king, I think it's just the word for king, probably some other instances of the Gentile being portrayed in a flattering light versus the special family portrayed in a not so flattering light. And that'll happen over and over again.
Wouldn't you think that the one Abimelech will pass down to the next Abimelech? Be careful about these.
Watch out for these people.
Hebrews here because they line up for a while.
Well, that's another thing. When did this take place, right?
This was after the boys were born.
Where are you getting that?
Well, because they were born in chapter 25, and this is chapter 26.
Yeah, I don't know about that. They weren't quite slaves to chronology and sequentialism like we are. I don't know about that. That's a lot of times in the in the gospel that are like that. At another time, Jesus said or did this. And we as you know, Westerners think, okay, this is after the previous story. But that's not the way these people arrange stories thematically or to make, you know, there's lots of reasons for the way they arranged them. We don't work like that. If we're telling narrative, we usually think in terms of starting at the beginning and moving through to the end. But they didn't necessarily do that.
The Gospels all argue that John's the most chronological. Luke, who you think is the historian would be most chronological, skips around.
Yeah.
With the thematic stuff.
Acts is wholly chronological as
Yes.
I'm thinking through it in my head. That one proceeds very, very chronologically. All right, so that's the story. And you know, it runs in the family. And so he gets you know, he gets a shellacking by the Gentiles that are supposed to be the ones that are cursed. So you have the cursed, you know, dressing down and correcting the blessed. It's just a weird.
Well, plus the fact that they didn't have the sons that were 60 years old, so this could happen not too long after this. You know, Abraham died and they were still young people basically.
Yes,
Um,
Yeah, Abraham's still alive for 15 years.
we don't, yeah, we don't know when this happened, but it sounds early.
And the other thing I'm thinking about here, Abimelech, he's the king of Philistine. This is the early founding of that people, as opposed to the early founding of the nation of Israel and the constant friction through.
There will be friction for the peoples of that land, whether you think they're the descendant, where the Philistines of the judges, period of the judges, are descendants of these people or not. And all of that is debated. There's some great YouTube videos on that, by the way. The Sea Peoples and Philistines and the Phoenicians and what's the relationship and so on and so forth. In between that, I watched, you know, videos of people getting pepper sprayed until I run out or until YouTube goes, ooh, I think he wants to watch videos of people getting tased. So then I start watching people's videos of people getting tased. All right. So reaffirmation of the covenant with Abraham, promises of blessing to Isaac, and then there's this deception. So nobody's surprised with Jacob's. Abraham, it was in Abraham's blood, it's in Isaac's blood, and then it's in Jacob's blood. Let's see. The question is whether he was even threatened at all. That's about as far as we're going to go. Get halfway through this, there, not quite yet. We're dealing with the blessing and cursing nature of the covenant. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. Pharaoh's already experienced that. The 5 kings, including the 5 kings also that Abraham went to war with, they experienced that as well. You know, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. So you don't, you know, stay away from, he's exactly right. Abraham says, stay away from these people. Do not touch these people because he understands. And that's the principle. The Egyptians will bless the people of God through Joseph, and the result will be that God will bless the Egyptians. Later on, the Egyptians will curse, in a sense, the people of God, even though they're pagans, and he will curse the Egyptians. So that's the principle, and we have the affirmation of the covenant, and now things will proceed according to the divine plan again. And after this chapter, we'll get back to Jacob and Esau. So we're going to stop there. It's 10:15. Anybody want a last word? Want to say anything? Okay. I'll take it. Thank you all.
Thank you, Gary.
Hey, thanks, Gabe.
Great.
See
Thanks,
ya.
Gary.
Yep, see you, Naomi.